Okay, folks, we are so lucky today to have Carl and Diana Landau. No relation to Martin Landau, unfortunately, but possibly even better. They're the co authors of the Amazon bestseller Pickleball for Dummies. They have also teamed up to produce the popular I Used to Be Somebody podcast and newsletter, where Carl hosts and Diana does the content wrangling. And I really want to find out more about that dynamic. And they're also part of I Used to Be Somebody World Tours, which is kind of, I'm assuming, part of the podcast or spun off from it. So, Carl, Diana, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Ryan. It's a real honor. We listen to your podcast, love it. So it's awesome being here.
Well, thank you. I was looking over, what you guys do, and it was great. It seems like we have some similarities in what our mission is. I mean, you're trying to inspire people 50 plus who don't want to retire, but they kind of want they're in that middle zone, right? And they want like an unretirement.
Right. So we actually there's sort of two audiences. One, people thinking about retiring, the same as yours. And then the other one are people that recently retired. They're trying to figure out what the heck do I do now? So that's really who the audiences are. But we say we don't want to retire. We want to do something new, something more fun, something more meaningful. So that's the idea behind the podcast in the newsletter.
And so you host and Diana's out there trying to grab people for the show. Is that how it works?
Well, I mean, I help him find guests occasionally, although he's an expert networker, so he finds a lot of his guests. But I do more of the blogging and helping with the newsletter and content wrangling. I always like to say he's dyslexic and I'm on the spelling bee, so we make a great team.
Yeah.
That kind of says it all right there.
So it does.
Okay. And so neither of yourselves consider yourself retired, which I talk about this with some other guests. The word is kind of outdated, so it's hard to sometimes define it or define the new version of it. So, but tell me a little bit about, what retirement means to you and why you don't consider yourself retired.
Well, we use the term unretirement. I know there are a lot of different words, but that sort of says what we do because the word retirement. Like I remember when I sold my last company, and we can talk a little bit about it. But I've had several companies, and the first thing people say to you is, "That's great, you're retired." And to me, that's like you're done. They just say, "Okay, you're done. You did a great job, and here's the gold watch." And it's like, that's sort of crappy, especially
Yeah.
the fact that people are living longer and longer. So, what do you got to do for the next 30 years? And a lot of people don't really think about that until they're in the middle of it. And sometimes they're not so happy what they're doing.
Yeah, that's what we found I mean, we've done research and trying to talk to as many happy retirees as we can to see what they're doing so we can help people emulate that. But most of them are very busy, at least the ones that I've talked to.
Yep.
And so it makes sense. Like they're not just sitting on the Barca lounger. Like that's not the way to happiness, you know?
No,
No.
no.
Well, I look at it too as an opportunity to reinvent yourself again, because you kind of have to do that through life. There's a lot of
Yeah.
pivots and twists and turns, and it's just sort of fun to see what's out there and what's next.
Yeah, and Diana, you and we talked to her a little earlier, and I feel like that might be a theme for you is the reinvention. Do you want to elaborate a little bit? You're really using this as a chance to do that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think if you've had a long, successful career and sometimes, a lot of friends from that. And I mean, for example, on the pickleball court, nobody cares what you used to do. Nobody even knows what you used to do. Every
Yeah.
once in a while I'll say, hey, what did you used to do? Oh, I was an emergency room nurse, or oh, I was, a lawyer, or whatever it is. But it's just a whole new opportunity to try new things and just see where you can go with it, what you're capable of.
Oh, completely. And it seems like for Carl, I'm sure that's part of it too. But Carl, you mentioned the word freedom. Is that a big thing for you?
Well, yeah, it is. because especially I was a entrepreneur since I've been 25, and that's a lot of responsibility, and you're raising kids and doing all that sort of stuff. And it's sort of funny. People think entrepreneur, wow, you're free to do whatever you want. Well, it doesn't. You are free to a certain extent, but
Yeah.
you do sort of get to pick, what you want to do, work wise, and a little bit more who you want to work with and the style you want. But there's a lot of responsibility like that comes with it, a lot of pressures. And I'm really glad to not have those anymore.
Yeah, it seems like if it's your company, I mean, yes, you're as free to do whatever you want
Yeah.
if you're willing to let the business go under, right? Like otherwise you're not, you're kind of locked into doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of times it's like, oh, well, normally someone who has a 9 to 5 job, well, they just assumed you can do all that. Well, I'm probably doing more than a lot of those people that have the 9 to 5 jobs, and all that sort of stuff. But as far as
Yeah.
Diane was talking about reinventing yourself, I think we wrote a blog post once, and I had a picture of myself in going to college, and I'm 17 years old or whatever. And I think these are your two chances to reinvent yourself. Like here, you were in high school and you were whatever you were, and then all of a sudden you're in college and you get to sort of reinvent yourself. And I think you get that second chance at what we call on retirement, where it's like, yeah, this is sort of who I was, and maybe these were my priorities and all that. But you know what? I want to do things a little different.
Oh, absolutely. And I knew that for you, the transition wouldn't be an easy one, right? I mean, someone who's had that many businesses and probably was working around the clock. You seemed very aware of how that transition would be difficult. But you mentioned that you reject slowing down. So how do you balance that? If because you wouldn't have retired unless you wanted some kind of change. So
Right.
what's different?
Well, yeah, so you do need that balance, and I have a podcast somewhat similar to yours, where people had all these responsibilities and all that, and now you don't quite have all that, but you sort of have to catch yourself, especially if you were this hardworking, person in your career. Like I'll give you an example. When we started, I used to be somebody. It was right in the pandemic. We started
Wow.
in March of 2020, and and it was weekly, and it was a newsletter that Diana did, and so weekly podcast, a weekly newsletter, blogs, doing social media and all that sort of stuff. And I realized within 4 months, wow, I just built myself a full time job. You know,
Accidentally, right?
well, well, yeah, but it was during the pandemic, so it's like, what else were you gonna do anyway? So that was fine then, but at least I was able to catch myself and realize, and I took advice of people that were guests on my show, where it's like, don't do that again. So I went
Yeah.
after about 40 episodes. I went and made it monthly, and we have a monthly newsletter. And I play a lot more pickleball than I do work.
Oh,
So
good.
that seemed to
Okay.
work. Yeah, so you really have to catch yourself though.
Well, here's the next book title for you two to write is How I Accidentally Created a Successful Business or something like that.
Yeah,
And so Diana, these are your words, not mine. Uh one of those annoying lifelong learners.
Yeah.
So is that a big part of what you want to do with your freedom?
Oh, absolutely. And I came from the corporate world where there was no flexibility whatsoever. And so the freedom for me is the flexibility to go and do what I want when I want and balance that with the work life. But yeah, I'm the one on the hikes that makes you stop and read the plaques. And I just have a lot of interests. I like to say I'm an enthusiast. And so this just means more time for me to explore all those things. And I mean, discovering the new, like if we go to a new place or a subject I don't know anything about, I just get all excited about
I was saying I'm sort of the opposite. I always
it.
I always say like I'm not a thinker, I'm a doer. you know,
Right.
and so and it's sort of true. We're total opposites. It seems to work out pretty well because some of us need to be a little bit more focused occasionally. And others of us like need to smell the roses a little bit more.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so it all works out.
It seems like it comes together and gels nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Diana, so are always you knew you wanted to keep learning forever. But you mentioned that you wish you had spent more time thinking about the grand plan. It's you seem like someone who would because you're so focused and organized. Tell me about that. Like why didn't you? What would you have what do you wish you had thought of?
Well, I just, was busy raising kids on my own and
Oh,
working full time. And I was sort of busy surviving and trying to
yeah.
thrive, right? But to think 10 years, 20, 30 years into the future about what fun things I want to be doing for me, I just somehow didn't have time for that. I should have allowed some time for that and some more reflection, but I just didn't. And,
Yeah.
so I'm doing it now.
Well, I just have one 2-year-old son, and even with one, I know exactly what you're saying because I find myself just trying to get through, and then I'm later regretting, "Why didn't I honor and value that moment I had with him?" Or because I was too busy, like, trying to get him to eat or something. Yeah.
Yep. It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's yeah, it's true. So I mean, this is the second marriage for both of us. So her life as a single mom was pretty like involved.
I
Well,
don't know how I don't Diana, I don't know how single moms do that. Like, I have my wife and I team up on this one guy, and that's hard. So how did you do that?
I'm actually also a good networker, and I have a group of close friends that were my rocks for sure.
Okay.
And a sign of strength is asking for help when you need it sometimes. People try to hold it all together and hold it all in and try to manage on their own. And there are times where you just need a little more help, and it's okay to ask for that because you do the same for your friends, right?
Totally, and it's hard sometimes to be, or I find myself being harder on myself than I would be on my friends. So in that sense, it'd be like, if they ask me for help, no problem, but I
Right.
can't ask them. Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. I'd like
yeah.
to see too, Carl was talking about, we come from, we were divorced and now we're married. Well, divorce is also another opportunity to reinvent yourself.
Yeah,
Re-
yeah.
Reset your priorities and what you want out of life.
So we did a big survey of, 1,350 retirees across 46 states and to find out what they were doing right. And one thing that was interesting, and I don't think we saw this coming, was um, that a lot of them had been divorced. A lot of the happy ones had either were either still married or had been divorced once. Like we start. I don't. Sorry if this is a little flip, but we started saying, "Hey, everyone gets a mulligan." Because that one divorce sometimes was a big part of the happiness.
I totally agree. It's
Totally.
I would say for both of us appreciate so much more what we have when you finally have it, especially when you're older. Like when you're young and people are young and get married, you're young and stupid. You don't realize if you had it good or you didn't recognize if you had it bad at the beginning because you didn't know better. And I I think really, I mean, for us, like having the second chance was like fantastic.
Yeah.
I agree.
The the one the one thing that we couldn't figure out was Hugh Hefner had been married like 3 times and he always seemed happy, so we weren't quite sure if he was like the exception to the rule or something.
I don't
Um,
know if you, yeah.
yeah. Um, Carl, so you've had a lot of businesses, as we said, but you're kind of a serial entrepreneur, and it seems like a lot of them did well. There was one I wanted to, I mean, we can go into all of them, but one I want to ask about the Brew Pub magazine.
Mhm.
I have a friend who owns a brewery, Timbler Brewing, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be talking to someone who started this magazine," and he said, "Ask him if he's seen very many brew pubs that were also music venues and if he thought that was a good idea. So what do you think?
I never owned a brew pub. I would never do that in a million years. Oh my god, talk about a complicated business. So you
Yeah.
combine having a restaurant, which is terrible, to having to deal with alcohol and all the regulations and all the stuff that goes with that, and then having to deal with staff on the brewery side and staff on the food side. So I'm not one to give advice on brew pubs and all.
Okay,
I
okay.
was a magazine publisher, so we just like yeah, and this is the very early days of brew pubs. So this is
Right.
like in the early '90s. So it was a
Oh,
very
the early this was like when Sierra Nevada was starting
yeah,
or that time.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was that era.
Gotcha.
So yeah. So I can't help your friend out.
Oh,
Anyway.
dang it. All right. Well, back to the drawing board. Uh, so I guess on that note, Carl, you've always been an entrepreneur. You published your first magazine, which was called Computer Language when you were only 25. Then you started up to 3 other niche magazines, and including like Brew Your Own, Brew Pub, Winemaker. But it seems like you kind of jumped around genres. So maybe you can talk about how it wasn't so much what it was about, but it was that you were good at the entrepreneur part. Is that kind of
Yeah,
how that?
or figuring out like where the niche was, because the
Okay.
name of my company was Niche Media, so it was all about figuring out niche. So this is like in the early '80s, computer magazines, and I won't go into too many details because you're gonna lose a lot of listeners right away. But
Okay.
it was a very exciting time. I mean, at the time, I got to meet Bill Gates and Steve
Oh
Jobs
wow.
and Steve Wozniak and all those sort of people. So that was a great time to get into the computer magazine business and started a magazine AI Expert, which is was one of the first magazines about artificial intelligence, which would be amazing now when it's
Yeah.
actually happening. But and it actually did very well at the time, but it was just way ahead of its time at the time. So anyway, I did that for about 5 years and sold it to a big publisher because I realized I what I was good at was starting stuff, and that's what I really enjoyed and the fun part and having a small staff. But as soon as it became more than like 16, 17 people, it's like a real company. I remember when I'm finally like, I don't want to do it anymore when people, because we never had vacation policies or anything because it
Oh
was,
right.
it was like, get your work done. If it's done, take it as many vacations as you want. I
Right.
think
Right.
when you get the second generation of employees, third generation, they're like, when are the breaks and stuff like that? I'm like, there's no breaks here. I don't know what you're talking about. But anyways,
Yeah, I can see how that it's because in your world it was like you said, do your work and then you can do whatever you want. You don't need me to micromanage this.
no,
Yeah.
no. So you have to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, which is true, I guess, what we do now.
Yeah.
And just be careful about like habits that you had that were successful for you. Like a really good thing is why people are successful. They won't quit. Here's this really tough thing, and we do it. Well, in the unretirement business, quitting is fine on new. You
That's
know,
a great line.
well, because all the time people are like, they have ideas. I want to do this volunteer job and all that. And they finally start doing it. It's like, wow, this isn't fun at all. It's like
Yeah.
a lot of Zoom calls or something like that. It's like, I'm like, quit. This isn't like a career. So try new things. And it may take 3 or 4 shots at different things till you find, your thing.
We
Yeah.
hear that a lot from our podcast guests. Just try things, go down the path, see if you like it. If you don't, it's okay. Make a change.
Yeah, and I would think that would help them to not feel overwhelmed because they don't think if I start this, I have to do this forever. I can just try it.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's someone who's like, "Oh, I've always wanted to do this." They've been saying this for like 25 years, and then there's a lot of pressure on you. In fact, I would recommend don't tell anyone what you're gonna do. Just do what, and then if you
Yeah.
like it, you could tell them what it is or whatever, and all that. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, completely. Well, speaking of what you like to do, Diana, so You're a native Sacramentan. I didn't know that that term was in use, but I do like Sacramento. So you've lived there your whole life?
Only 5 people have ever used that term,
Oh,
so
hey,
recommend.
make it 6.
Well,
Um,
and sometimes we say sacred dimension, but that's a whole other story.
okay. um, so but now you both live there, and Diana, maybe you can take this one. So tell me about your favorite core pursuits, like hobbies that are more than hobbies. What are yours?
Well, I love to cook. I'm constantly looking for new recipes and going to classes, and I love to entertain. I like people who are guinea pigs. Um, I love to garden. I love to
Me too.
read. I'm in a writers group. Play a lot of pickleball.
Yeah, 3 or 4 times a week, right?
Oh, probably.
You
I
spend
should
water.
be 3 or 4. I'm more like 4 or 5, and I swim too.
Oh, oh, you play more than you should. Is that
Probably.
right? Okay, okay.
And we have grandkids, and I love spending time with them, and we have some older relatives, and I love spending time with them
Yeah,
too.
yeah, so, like, our age are taking care of, like, the not
The old
full-time or
ones and
anything,
the
but
young
the
ones.
old ones and the young ones. I think a lot of people listening, you're in that situation where you're sort of that generation that's doing all that, and she does all that, and yeah.
Do you mean the sandwich generation,
Yeah.
or do you mean like taking care of your parents and the
Yeah,
grandk
her mom and aunt are 93 and 90, and, like, the
Okay.
grandkids are, like,
Yeah.
10 and 7, so, yeah.
And do they all live close by?
Yes, we all live within 15, 20 minutes.
Oh, that's
Right.
nice.
They're all really close. Trust me, they're close.
Well, that was another thing that our research found was that the happiest retirees that we talked to, most of them lived near at least one of their adult children. Strangely or interestingly enough, it wasn't a good idea to live together always, but living near each other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, and the other 4, we have 5 kids between us, and the other 4 live in the Bay Area,
yeah.
so they're not very far away.
Oh, yeah, that's easy. Yeah. Okay. So you got that covered. Okay.
Ryan, I was gonna ask you, though, I'd love to know the research on this because you hear so many people that end up moving, which is a big decision, you do in our age, A lot of them move to be with the grandkids. They don't know anyone
Yeah.
else in that city or something. I
Yeah.
always, I always think that's sort of weird, personally. Like, I mean, in the fact that the movie is like that's high stakes. I don't know. Do you know anything about those situations?
I don't have any statistics on it, but I can just anecdotally from or what I would think is that that could be tough because you're now it's like yeah, you're great when you're with the kids and grandkids, but you can't be with them all day. So now you don't know anybody and you're having to restart everything. And I think some people actually don't mind that, but like you said, that can be risky because you're uprooting everything and kind of being like, now we're here. So hey, grandkids,
Yeah.
I better be with you all the time. The grandkids might be like, "No."
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Once the grandkids are about 12, they're like, "Wait, I have my old life. I mean, you guys were great. I really appreciate everything you did, and we'll talk to you in a year or two." I mean, it's like,
Well, the grandparents
Yeah,
start playing pickleball, and they will have a whole new set of friends right away.
there you go.
she's one of those annoying kickball people that,
Annoying pickleball.
well, I mean, in fact, I have to tell you, Ryan, when we were writing the book, Diana said to me, because we're playing pickball all the time, we're writing about pickball all the time, and it's just on your, you're dreaming,
Dreaming
dreaming.
about typos, yes.
Well, but also pickleball shots and stuff like that. And Diana's like, I think we need to back off from people because we're talking too much pickleball. Because it's anyway.
They're, like, ready to come into the room, It's like, "Okay."
Right. Well, I know when I had asked you about social groups you participate in, and I think Carl said, well, a lot of them are with pickleball, but just so you know, we're not crazy. Some of them aren't about pickleball. um, yeah, but you probably have a great friend group. I'm guessing since you've been in that area a long time. Is that a good you have a lot that's a very rich environment for you?
It is. I mean, I have some friends I've known for all my life, and, yeah, it's been wonderful.
Well, but one point on that, Ryan, is so I'm not from Sacramento, and I live. I'm from the Midwest and lived in San Francisco a long time, and then lived in Davis, and then also for a
Oh,
little.
okay.
But my job was putting on. Eventually, I put on conferences and trade shows that I owned, and I did that for 20 years. Well, none were in Sacramento. They were all in Denver or Charleston or Austin or places people want to go to.
Right.
So I didn't have a lot of local friends, and I think that happens a lot for people that particularly travel a lot for their job. And I think that's a huge part of successful retirement is making new friends. And
Yeah.
not to belabor the pickball thing is, but it is an amazing way to meet very diverse, very interesting people by joining what in our case pickleball, but like any sort of like really cool hobby. And all of a sudden you have, I mean, in our case, like 20 friends that we see all the time because of that.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reinvention that I was talking about earlier is also reinventing like new friends.
Well, I
Yeah.
Carl's pretty good at, for sometimes for men, it's a little harder for them just to go out and make new friends, especially if they get
Yes.
really involved in their careers. And he's pretty good about reaching out to people. Hey, let's grab a beer. Let's go have lunch. Trying to get to know people better, that kind of thing. You have to make that effort. You really do.
Yeah, in fact, so my show is on the Retire Sooner network, and Wes
Right.
Moss hosts our flagship show, Retire Sooner, and he interviewed, and I'm not going to be able to remember the name off the top of my head, but he interviewed an expert or he interviewed someone who said that what you said, men actually struggle to find those friends later much more than women do.
It's totally true. It's like with guys, a lot of them. Well, I have like my three friends I've had since high school. I'm good, and then a lot of their friends end up being like their wives,
Yeah, yeah.
husbands, and stuff like that. But I mean, you do whatever you want to do, but I don't want to do that.
I mean, it may be biology going back to like I don't want to get too too far flung here, but how do the animal species do it? Like maybe male apes don't. I don't know.
Well,
It
we
seems
just
like
got
women
maps
are much
of
better
Africa and
at.
all the different species, and it still seems like the females run things. If yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's just
Uh,
the way it is.
That's true.
Well, speaking of different species, I've heard a cat meow a couple times, and I wanted to ask. So, Carl was a dog guy growing up, but then he kind of switched to cats, and now your only child still living at home is a 17-year-old, handsome, short-haired black cat named Felix, who has the
Felix,
personality of a dog.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Felix
yeah.
the cat.
He
Is
wants to
that
be
who's
part of
meowing?
the podcast,
He
yeah.
very wants to be part of it. In fact, part of pickleball and part of I think good for anyone is stretching and all that in the morning, of which I do that. And I have this about 15-minute deal that I do, put on music, and Felix, he is like totally part of this whole thing. And he gets there, he likes his tail like be rolling and all that, and it's like a pretty funny
Yeah, he
situation.
sits on the floor mat, waits for Carl, like, "Could you finish
Oh,
already? I'm waiting." Yeah.
Yeah,
how
so
cool!
he's my buddy.
That motivates you to stretch more, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun and all that. So
I was gonna ask, I mean, just quickly, if you recommend any stretches, because yeah, I'm already at a point where I need to stretch more, and my wife just got certified as a yoga instructor, so stretching is gonna become big for me. I know.
Perfect.
I
Yeah.
would I would know way less than your wife about it. You know, I unfortunately as you get older, especially if you do any sports, I mean you're gonna hurt yourself and stuff. And I had a bad back. I just went to physical therapy and they showed me these are the things you do. If you do this every day, you'll be okay. And amazingly, I have. So
Oh, that's
I
good to know.
yeah, yeah. But
Okay.
stretching really is important, and I'm sure based on your wife being the yoga instructor, you're going to be doing a lot of stuff like that, which is
I
good for you.
Yes, I'm gonna make a commitment to it. I already wanted to, and now this is solidifying it. I'm gonna do it. Yeah. I do have 2 cats, and so maybe one of them will be my Felix and
Yeah.
scratch it to me.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I know that you have enough social groups. I think we've covered that, but what kind of goes into the the same line of thinking as the stretching is, um, do you find more or less limitations as you age? There's gonna be some pros and cons of being younger and being in your primary working years versus having more freedom and unretired. So which one do you think has more limitations and which one has less?
Well, I mean, as far as limitations, I mean, for us, and one thing we talked about was freedom or whatever, in the fact that, like, I mean, we are free finally to like travel, which we didn't really talk about, but it's a huge
Yes.
part of our life. And I think a lot of people our age, it is. And it's like, I did a decent amount of traveling when I was younger. Diane didn't travel too much, but like we're traveling like crazy. My recommendation, people, is do it when you can. You know, it's like I would say in your 60s and 70s, travel, see, you know, meet as many different, you know, people as you can around the world. Cause you just never know. And I know a lot of people are like always sort of waiting and you know, there's always a reason why you can't, you know, do this trip or whatever. And you can talk yourself out of a lot of different things.
Oh yeah.
But it's like you never know when you can't do that. So, and, you know, so you don't see a ton of people in their 80s, you know, doing these exotic trips and stuff like that. So it's like, I think, you know, if you can afford it and all that, like do as much as you can, you know, when you can, you know.
Right.
To add to that, we do a lot of little local trips, just take off,
All the
usually
time.
during the week
Oh.
where it's not crazy crowded. And there's a lot of local places to explore, whether it's, well, of course, Sacramento, our claim to fame is being close to the Bay Area and the wine country and Tahoe and those kinds
In
of things.
Tahoe. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, there are a lot of short, even day trips that you can take to just sort of get you out of your space, refresh your mind. And you don't have to have a lot of money to do that.
Yes. And for people, so a lot of our listeners are in the Atlanta area. I mean, they're all over, but I would say that's our biggest. And so they may not know. So I just want to tell them Lake Tahoe is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. Every time I go there, I'm like, I can't believe this exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah. We
It's
live
and you're close. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
But it's good to plan those little getaways. It really is. I mean, you can build that into your whole strategy.
So how often would you say you do those little getaways?
Oh gosh, once a month?
Once a month.
Once a month?
Oh, that's pretty good.
And then we're part of what we're doing now is, you know, our business has gone from a podcast. I used to be somebody to Pickleball for Dummies. I don't think I ever showed that, but anyway. and and then we're started the I used to be somebody world tour. So we're gonna go country by country, and we teamed up with like a boutique tour company where they will do whatever tour you want in any country, basically. And so we have a group of 20 people going. Our first one's in Tuscany in like a week, and
What, in a
then
week?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
And then we teach a couple of on retirement classes during it, and then we're going to Portugal next year, and then every year we'll go to a different country, and we're even doing a pinkball trip in Arizona for like
Wow.
so. So it's you know what I say to people as far as like what you ultimately want to do, like our what we did was just do one thing, the podcast, and it has led to many things. And you just have to look for what the opportunities are. So, I mean, my background's being an entrepreneur, so I can't help myself but think of all this stuff that we could do. And
Pretty good at it. He knows how to spot trends, obviously, with the craft brewery and the winemaking and pickleball and all of those things. So,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. So, anyway, it's been fun.
I would imagine that a podcast like that would lead to a natural opportunity to network, and since you're already really good at that, it just takes off.
Yeah. 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 Anyway, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, so the Tuscany one's in a week, is that what you said? And then Portugal will be
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
year?
Yeah. So by the time this is on, we'll have already done the Tuscany trip.
Ah,
We
okay.
can give you a follow-up on that.
Yes, yeah, we may need to do that. Yeah, or maybe I can recommend if you're gonna write, maybe Diana's gonna write something about it, we could send people
Oh,
to read it
Oh,
too.
we can totally do that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Have you've been out of the country a number of times already, or is this did you say it's the first one?
Oh,
Oh,
no, no,
no.
no, the first of our tour,
Oh,
that
okay.
we're hosting, but, yeah, no, we took an amazing trip to South Africa for 3 weeks,
Oh,
um,
wow.
which was great.
That was in March.
Yeah, we went to Portugal before that for 2 weeks, and,
And we
yeah,
both traveled separately before we got together.
yeah, yeah, but we're
Gotcha.
definitely I really recommend people, like, do your international travel, though, while you're healthy and can do it, because you can always do the easy trips, all that later.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great because there's that sort of golden time where now you have time to do it and maybe the financial resources to do it, but it's before you're too maybe limited physically to do it. So there's
Yeah.
that sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean, you can't I mean, everything we're talking about doing, you have to have the health. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the number one. That's even before money. So you can have all the money in the world. If you don't have the health, it's not gonna work out. So it's like, I mean, that's why pickleball or anything you're gonna do needs to be part of what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Will you be able to play pickleball in Tuscany?
It's funny. One of the people I interviewed lives there, and he's American. He's lived there 14 years, and he's told me he's not seen one football court yet, but they actually have a sport in Europe that's more popular called paddle.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah, yeah. So it's sort of a combination of pickleball and racquetball, where there's actually it's outside, but there's walls.
Oh,
I'd love to play that. That's big
yeah.
in Europe and in South America.
I did not know about that. I interviewed someone who loves pickleball and they had like an app they use to find pickleball wherever they go. So I didn't know. It seemed like there's definitely opportunity for it.
Oh, yeah,
It
but we always
yeah.
there's a, chapter in the book about always pack your paddle, and,
Oh, there you go.
I think we have it for
we don't
Thanksgiving.
always do that, but a lot of times we definitely have our paddles in the trunk and just when you meet locals, it's really fun.
Oh, well,
That
we
is
go to Hawaii all the time and play a lot of pickleball in Hawaii.
oh, I bet.
Yeah,
That must be a great place to play pickleball.
yeah,
It
it
is, it's
is.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I want to start with Diana, but I want to get some parting tips. What should people do? Maybe someone who isn't retired yet and they are thinking about it, or someone who is retired but they're not enjoying it. What do you recommend they do?
I would say take some of your good friends to coffee and talk it out loud, talk it through, get feedback from people that you know and respect, and listen to them and see what they say about what they think your strengths and weaknesses are, or things that you might have talked about frequently that you kind of forgot. Those kinds of things. That would be a good place to start for sure. Taking classes, that's another good way to sort of find what you're interested in. Volunteering, I do that too,
Ah.
and
Oh, you do?
yes,
Okay.
I
Ryan,
cook.
she's a real good doer. She's like handling all that work, man.
Oh, okay, okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
well, I was gonna say our traveling and volunteering are usually the top of the list of people that we talk to. So you've got both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you just sort of have to reach out and talk to people, find out
Okay.
what's out there, find out what the opportunities are. Sometimes you
And
don't
car
even know. I think sometimes you might not even know what questions to ask. So that'll you need to take that time for reflection, and it's not always easy. You can get kind of busy doing things and not really take that time, that dedicated time, but you need to do that.
Yeah, I imagine it's hard to reinvent yourself if you don't know what you want to be reinvented into.
A lot of people say that. They really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Carl, how about you? What advice do you have?
Well, I would say embrace being a beginner.
Yeah.
That's what stops a lot of people. So you've particularly people that listen to our podcast and probably yours too, that they've had these successful careers, and people have really admired them. They seek them out and all that. And then when you don't have the career, that all stops. That no one cares, and it really discourages a lot of people. And then they're sort of worried about, well, here's this new thing I'm probably not going to be good at. And well, you know what? Think about yourself when you were 22, 23, your first job. Well, you probably weren't very good at that job,
Right.
and and so remember back then, and I say embrace being a beginner. It's like, hey, I don't know anything about it, and I'm not going to be good at this, and I think people will respect that and want to help you or whatever. But that stops a lot of, especially overachievers types,
Yeah.
where they're an expert at this and all, and I'm not an expert type. So Diane mentioned I'm dyslexic. I got really bad grade. I got really bad grades when I was a kid, and all that. So I'm used to like failing a lot. So well, I am,
So it
and
doesn't bother you. Yeah.
it's no. Otherwise, I would have been destroyed as like a 7-year-old who got D's in second grade in spelling and reading and all that. So, in
Yeah.
fact, like one thing I did that was new, that was really, I mean, ultimately fun, was I took like a stand-up comedy class, a workshop.
Yes, that was amazing to I read that. Tell me about that real quick. Like,
Okay, just our local theater, the like really one of the best theaters in Tech Mount, the B Street Theater. I just saw this ad, like where they had never done it before. This comedian who I knew, he had never taught it, and there were 8 of us in the class. And it was just 5 classes, 2 hours long. And your final is you do your comedy stand up for over 100 people.
oh wow, that's a
And
pretty big group for a first time.
it is, and so, it was an amazing experience, and, my theme of it was, being dyslexic, but also it was sort of an homage to my mom, who was
Oh.
amazing on herself,
Oh,
and,
wow.
uh, and so it was an unbelievable experience doing that, really, really scary. I mean, and I wanted to quit a whole bunch of times, and I didn't, and I ended up doing like a 14-minute bit, which which is long.
Wait, what the one bit was 14 minutes?
So no, it was 4 short like stories, and unfortunately, Diana, she had to be my audience of one. It was during the pandemic
Oh.
practicing, so the jokes
Diana, did Diana heckle you? Is that how that happened?
A little bit, for sure.
But you call that content wrangling.
that. Well, actually, she edits everything I do, and she's very kind about it. She always says, "I think this is what you meant to say," and then she rewrites the whole thing. It's not playing well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very considerate. But I hats off for doing stand-up. I've done some stand-up, and I hadn't done it in a while, and oddly enough, my father-in-law was retiring and having a retirement party, and he asked me to get up and do some stand-up at the party. So that was like last week. So I'm
Wow.
with you. I feel your pain of getting the rust out. And but yeah, ultimately, I don't know about you, but every time I do it, even if only get one laugh, I always feel good afterward. So I don't know if you had that same experience.
It was great. No, I mean,
Yeah.
it was a really fun thing to do.
And so the next step is getting Diana on stage.
Honestly, I recommend that she does it. I know her stories, and I've tried to do it, and for some reason, she's not interested in that. So,
Oh, well, I
Okay.
find other ways. Like 3 years ago, when we were during the pandemic, I decided to take a reentry college class,
oh yeah.
and
Oh.
I was terrified because it was all online, but I thought, well, I'm not going anywhere. It's the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So it's all online. I have to do a project on the history of Bhangra dance with two
Okay.
fellow classmates. All communication is text. And for this PowerPoint presentation, I'm working with Precious and Treasure, and we're putting this together through text. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. But I got through it, and I kept freaking out, and Carl kept saying, oh, you'll be fine. And yeah, I got an A. But it was a whole new experience being online, the online
Oh,
learning
yeah.
way. It was
You got
fun
out of your comfort
people.
zone and you did
Oh,
it.
yeah. I had to post on chat boards with 20-year-olds. It was just wild.
I can see how that would be so intimidating because that way of doing it is like kind of all they know, so it's
Yeah.
secondhand, and you're having to kind of just jump in.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
that's really cool. All right, well, okay, Carl and Diana Landau, folks, go out. I want you to buy Pickleball for Dummies. I want you to listen to the I Used to Be Somebody podcast, read the newsletter, and then go to Tuscany or Portugal for the I Used to Be Somebody World Tour. Just do it all. Carl and Diana are your one-stop shop for being somebody and enjoying 50 plus on retirement. So thank you so much for coming on the Happiest Retirees podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. It was awesome.